our brain is always sort of filtering everything and simplifying things and chunking things down because there's just so much data coming into through our senses. Our brain can't handle it all. It developed the ability to filter things, and it decides what's important, what's not important, and it leaves out certain things. If there's too much information coming in, it'll reduce it to give us something that we can work with and understand. And it's been doing that for millions of years.
In this episode, we'll learn how to eliminate unwanted anger from our lives. Helping us with this is an author, internal medicine doctor, and anger elimination coach. Welcome to the show, Mort. How are you doing?
Toby, well, thank you for having me as a guest.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be speaking with you in this episode because we'll be learning so much about how to eliminate unwanted anger from our lives. And what for this conversation, I learned that you are no stranger to it yourself. In your 20s and 30s, I read that you used to be super hungry. So I'd like us to talk about this. Like, if you could reflect back on this period of your life, what made you super angry and how did it affect your life?
Yeah, well, it was not pretty. Growing up as a kid, I didn't grow up in an angry family. My parents weren't very angry. I didn't have a lot of anger as a young boy. But when I became a teenager and then a young adult, I started getting angry at myself first because I had these high expectations and I didn't always meet them. And so I would get frustrated, angry with myself, and then that would carry over and I'd get angry at other people, girlfriends and my parents and all that kind of stuff. So it really, and even when I went through my medical training, I would get angry at myself a lot because there was a lot of things, that you don't quite do as perfectly as you'd like to do. And then when I got into practice, I would get angry at some of my patients sometimes if they wouldn't follow my advice or they would make bad decisions about their health or something like that. So I had a lot of anger and I just couldn't control it. And it was very upsetting to me that I couldn't control my emotions because I had been successful at most things I put my mind to in my life up to that point. And I just couldn't figure out this anger thing. I had some other problems too. I had anxieties. I had relationship problems, partly due to the anger. So all my relationships with women failed one after another. I ended up actually not talking to my parents for 7 years because I got angry at my mother as a teenager. And at one point I said, that's it. I just don't want to talk to you anymore. And didn't talk to my mother, even though we lived in the same city, a couple miles apart. For 7 years, I had no contact with them at all. That's how angry I was at them. And then eventually I figured out what the heck was going on, where my anger, how I was generating the anger that I didn't understand, despite all my medical training and even dabbling in psychology. I'd never really understood how the anger was being created within me. And then once I figured that out, then I was able to do something about it. And that's what I've been teaching people how to do, what I learned 40 years ago and have been using in my life ever since. I'm now, been teaching that to people for most of 4 decades now.
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's while listening to your story, I was like, okay, would you say like having high expectations about yourself from others, would you say that leads to anger? Would you say if you reflect back on all the situations that you went through or experience that you had, would you say like the expectation that you had was the cause or there was something beneath all of that?
There really wasn't anything beneath it other than the fact that I didn't understand where it was coming from. So what was beneath it were the things inside me that were generating the anger. Because most of the time when we think about what's causing us to get angry, when we get angry, mostly we're looking outside of us. We're looking at what other people are doing, things that bother us, things that we think are not right, stuff like that. And the government could be doing it, or our boss could be acting a certain way, or our partner could be acting. So it's always we're looking at the behavior of things outside of us, and we have this big blind spot. We don't see what's going on inside of us that's actually generating the anger. Because you can have 2 people standing side by side, and they witness the same event, and one person gets angry and the other doesn't. So it can't be the event that's directly causing the anger, right? It's got to be the internal process that's going on in the person that gets angry that makes them angry versus the one that doesn't. So I, we kind of intuitively know that, but we don't really know, and we haven't really been taught to understand, what goes on internally that generates the anger. And once I figured that out, which wasn't easy, by the way, I did a lot of personal development work over a number of years before I finally figured out what was going on. But once I saw the dynamic of how the anger was being created in me, then I was able to step in and do something about it for the first time, which I hadn't been able to do with the standard anger management, kind of techniques and processes and stuff like that I had tried to use, and it didn't really work all that well.
Yeah. You made mention of something right now that I would love to just ask already. How does anger get generated within us? Like, can you explain to me from your experience how you were able to find out the cause, the trigger, the roots reason why the anger starts?
Yeah, so that's what I did, but I can share it with you and your audience. It's really not complicated. So the first thing you have to understand is when we're looking out at the world and observing things, we're never seeing things as they actually happen. Our brain is always sort of filtering everything and simplifying things and chunking things down because there's just so much data coming into through our senses. Our brain can't handle it all. It developed the ability to filter things, and it decides what's important, what's not important, and it leaves out certain things. If there's too much information coming in, it'll reduce it to give us something that we can work with and understand. And it's been doing that for millions of years. Okay. So it's nothing new. But so the brain is always filtering things. And there's three primary filters that cause the emotion of anger. Other emotions have other filters. So if you have anxiety, for example, you have three different filters. But there are three filters for anxiety, and they're very simple. People should really write these down because they'll be able to use them from now on to understand their anger. But what makes us angry is when we're looking at the world through these three ways. One is that we're seeing somebody doing something bad and wrong that they shouldn't be doing, somebody or something. For example, if we're working on our computer one day and our computer just goes on the fritz and, we get angry at it, one of the reasons we're getting angry is because it's doing something it shouldn't do. It should work smoothly. It should work continuously. It's not. Okay, so it's doing something wrong, bad, wrong, whatever. The second filter is somebody's being negatively impacted, somebody being hurt or harmed or negatively impacted. So if you're sitting at your computer and you're working, and then all of a sudden it goes blank, and you can't do any work, or you may have lost the work that you had, you're being negatively impacted by that. Okay, so you're upset with the computer because it's not working the way it should, and it's negatively impacting you. And then the third filter is what I call unilateral blame. So we kind of look at the thing that's doing the bad and wrong thing, and we see it exclusively to blame for whatever's happening. We don't see any other causes, any other factors. It's like we have blinders on, and we just focus on that one person or that one thing. So if you're angry at your computer, it's not behaving the way it should. It's negatively impacting you, and it's to blame. The computer's to blame. You didn't have anything to do with it. Nobody else had anything to do with it. It's the computer that is at fault. So that's where our anger comes from. No matter what the external triggers are, and there can be thousands of different things that trigger human beings to get angry, okay? It all boils down to ultimately these three filters. That whatever thing is, we're looking through these three filters. Somebody's doing something bad and wrong, somebody was hurt, harmed, negatively impacted, and somebody was 100% responsible or to blame. If you write those three things down, every time you get angry, you'll now know what the internal causes are that have been invisible up till now for most people. We don't see them because they're inside of us, inside of our brain. So we don't, unless you know what they are, which I just shared with you. Now you can see, now you have a mechanism to bring them into your awareness whenever you get angry. So now you know what's causing your anger. So that's what I realized like 40 years ago. Every time I got angry, I was looking at things through those three filters. And then what I subsequently discovered was that a lot of times, one or more of those filters is going to be wrong, or it's going to have some errors in it. It's going to be missing information, or it's going to have left out important things, that the brain's filtered down and didn't present to us. So there's going to be mistakes in those filters Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's all three. Could be misleading or distorted or false. And so a lot of times we end up getting angry because these filters are faulty and we don't know that. Well, firstly, we don't even know that there are filters going on, the reality is being filtered. And secondly, we don't know the questions to ask to find out where they may be in error. So now we know you can ask, did the person or the thing really do something bad and wrong? Or did I just, judge them to be bad and wrong, based on my personal standards? And in truth, what they did was not really wrong for them or for another person. It's just different than how I would do it. A lot of times we do that. We'll judge somebody to be wrong, doing something wrong, when in fact, they're not. It's just different than how we would do it. So that's one way the filter could be wrong. It can make it look like the person's doing a wrong thing when in fact they're not really. And this thing about hurt and harm, a lot of times either people aren't hurt or harmed at all, or it's not a big deal. They're making it into a big deal, but it's not really a big deal that maybe they had their feelings hurt a little bit, which is in truth is not that big a deal. It's not like they lost an arm or a leg or something like that. And then the thing about blame is it's very rare that somebody's 100% responsible to blame. Usually there are other factors involved that our brain has kind of eliminated in the filter. So we don't see those, but sometimes we play a role. Sometimes other people in their lives play a role. Their upbringing plays a role. What happened to them that day played a role. The things that we don't see, but are important to know as to why a person behaved the way they behaved. So we have these filters that are frequently faulty, and our brain is playing tricks on us to make us angry, and we don't understand that that's what's happening. We think we're seeing the truth, and when we think the things that those three filters are true, then we get the emotion of anger. But a lot of times they're not. So that's the interesting thing about it, is that our anger is often lying to us in ways that we don't really see and perceive. But you can fish around and you can figure it out eventually.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, that's so deep. Like, we see things with different lenses, basically, and depending on the lens that we're seeing a situation with.
Yes, absolutely. And we all see through lenses. We all see through the lenses that our brain and bodies create over time, and they can be different for different people. But they all, for anger, in other words, you live in Germany, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Anytime anybody in Germany gets angry, it's for these same three filters. Just like in the United States, the same three filters. If they lived in Russia, it would be the same three filters. If they lived in China, it would be the same three filters. They're always looking in those three ways. So people who got angry 1,000 years ago and, decided to wage war against somebody else, they were looking through those three filters. And 1,000 years from now, when people get angry, they're going to be looking through the same three filters. So if you wrote those three things down, you will have the key to where your anger is coming from. And you'll also be able to understand anytime anybody around you gets angry or they get angry at you, you know exactly they're looking at you through those three filters. They're thinking you did something wrong. You hurt or harmed somebody, either them or somebody they cared about. And they think that you're 100% responsible to blame, and they and nobody else had anything to do with it. And frequently, you'll know immediately when someone's angry at you that they're off base. They've got a wrong perception of what really happened. You'll know that immediately, but they won't, because they're stuck in these three filters and the belief that they're true.
Yeah. So I'm so interested in knowing this. Like, okay, now we know these three filters, but it's one thing to have the knowledge about it, but it's another thing to apply this knowledge. So I'd like to know how your approach and your book, helps people to let go of this filter, to see situations in a different way or from different lenses.
Well, that's what I do. I developed a coaching program. Firstly, I've been teaching this for 40 years, so I've had other programs where I've included this anger piece, but I developed a program specifically for anger that takes just 10 one-hour Zoom calls like this, like we're doing today. And I'd work with somebody one-on-one, and in the first two sessions, I would teach them the model that we're talking about here with about the three filters, and then there's some behaviors that come into play also that I would teach them in the second session. And then for the remainder of the 8 sessions, we would just go through examples in their life of when they got angry, or they might have gotten angry yesterday. They might have been angry, 10 years ago, whatever. We'll work with examples in there. They may still be angry about things today that happened in the past. We'll just take all those examples and we'll work through that formula that I just showed you. Okay. And I'll have them see that, yes, I was thinking those ways when I got angry. Yes, that's exactly where my anger is coming from. And then I'd help them do the deep dive. Okay, how do you question these filters? How do you determine what's true and what's not true? That takes some coaching and some practice to be able to do. So that's what I used in the other 8 sessions. And by the end of the 10 sessions, most people, they got the model down, perfectly, and they have a lot of practice and experience, working through different examples in their own life where they see they originally thought this, and then now they realize, well, it wasn't completely true. Here's what was true. Here's what wasn't true. And then they realize their anger goes away once they realize the parts that aren't true, you know? And then they have that ability, they have that tool, that technique to use for the rest of their life. I've been using it for 40 years. Every time I get angry now, which is not that often anymore, but every time I get angry now, I know exactly where it's coming from. I know exactly how to address it, how to make it go away very quickly, how to tell the truth about it. And I've practiced it over and over again, not only with myself, but in working with other people. So that's the main thing I do to teach people. But then I also recently published a book where I took everything that I teach in that program and I put it in a book. So you don't have to do the 10 session thing if you don't want to. You can just get the book on Amazon, and it's called Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure. And it teaches you all the principles that we're talking about here, and it goes into more depth. It gives you more examples, gives you more training in how to do the truth-telling part and all that kind of stuff. And literally, you can take that book and use it as a blueprint to learn how to eliminate your own anger anytime you want. And if there are times, if anger is being useful to you in some way, and sometimes it is, sometimes it helps motivate you or get you out of a bad situation or can be a positive factor in a person's life, then you don't have to get rid of it. You can keep it. For example, if I'm talking to a customer service rep because of some problem I'm having and I'm not getting the answers that I want, I might pretend to be angry, even though I'm not. I might pretend to be angry because I know that gets them, I might get up to a supervisor or somebody else that can fix the problem that they're not fixing. Mm-hmm. So there's times when anger can be useful and then you wouldn't want to eliminate it, but mostly anger is harmful. It causes a lot of damage in our relationships, to our health, in our careers, and just doesn't feel good when you're not in control of your emotions. So it's, the most, I would say 90% of the time we're angry, it's a negative experience for us in life.
Yeah. I mean, I was about to ask you that question already because, we all have this misconception about anger is something very bad, but sometimes it can be sometimes good.
Yes. I've seen a number of people who've been in particularly women who've been in bad relationships where they've really been treated poorly and they put up with it for a long while. And eventually it wasn't until they got really good and angry that they decided to stand up for themselves and end the relationship and move on, but it really took getting angry to get them to realize that they have to change this or it's going to keep going on and they're going to keep, not enjoying the relationship, not being treated fairly in the relationship. So there's lots of ways in which anger can have really helped people. Plus it helps, sometimes it spawns movements, and for social change can come from anger, and that can be a good thing too.
Yeah. So I think it takes some level of, emotional intelligence or intelligence to be able to differentiate or to actually distinguish between, yes, this anger at this very situation, this very moment is very, very important for me to express. And this anger, I have to maybe work on it. I don't have to express it because it could cause damage or it could cause harm to people around me.
Yeah. Well, the whole problem of, do you express your anger or do you sit on it? Neither one is that great. They both can cause problems. Okay. When you express your anger, that's tricky. It's hard to do in a good way. And most of the time it may upset the other person or you get anger back from them or whatever. But when you sit on your anger, you don't express it, then it can cause trouble inside and trouble with your health and stuff like that. Plus you're not expressing what you truly feel. So neither of those is all that great, but but if you don't have the anger, if you can eliminate the anger or keep it from happening in the first place, then you don't have to worry about, well, what do I do? Do I express it or do I suppress it? Well, you wouldn't have it, and that's the thing I encourage people to go for. Go for not having the anger And then all these problems with how do you express it, or do you express it, or don't express it, all those go away because you're not angry anymore. You're looking at the situation differently in a way that doesn't make you angry anymore. And so there's nothing to manage. There's nothing to express or not express, you know? And that's really the best solution if you know how to do it. And that's what I show people how to do. You can get the book and you can learn how to do it, or do coaching with me and I can teach you how to do it. And then you've got that ability. And I've been, like I say, I've been benefiting from that for 40 years. I can't tell you how many things that's caused me to avoid having to deal with that I would have had to deal with if I still was being an angry person.
Yeah. I would like to shed some light on that already. Like from your experience, when you think back, even from your clients also that you've worked with, like what are some things that have been damaged due to anger? What are some common things that get destroyed due to anger? Or yeah.
Well, relationships. So a lot of marriages fail because and lead to divorce because people get angry with each other and have resentments that linger on. Can damage your health. As a doctor, I saw in my angry patients, I saw a lot more health problems in them than in my non-angry patients. It can cost you your job, or you can be demoted at work or not advance at work. Anger land you in jail. You can lose your life, if you get angry at the wrong person. You do road rage and somebody takes out a gun and shoots you, So it's, I remember there was one woman that I met at a workshop, and she told me a story of when she had 4 teenage boys. She was married. She had 4 teenage boys, and her oldest boy was having a lot of emotional problems and psychological problems, and they were struggling with it. And they were home one day, and they got into a fight in the living room between the mother and the son. And towards the end of the fight, the son just turned to the mother and turned his back and left and said, "I hate you." And the mother's automatic response out of anger said to him, "I hate you too." Okay. And so he walks upstairs, and she thinks he's going to his bedroom, but he goes into his father's room, gets his gun, and kills himself. And that's an extreme example of how, anger can lead to things that you don't want to have happen. And I'm not to say that she was to blame. The kid obviously had severe problems enough that he was ready to commit suicide, just needed, the very slightest provocation. So he obviously was the bulk of the responsibility, but she really felt horrible for a long time that she, felt like she had caused the death of her son, from her anger outbursts. So that's, like I say, it's an extreme example, but it kind of makes the point that anger can cause a lot of damage, a lot of damage. Another client I was working with had a lot of a young lady had a lot of anger issues, and she had a brother, an older brother that also had a lot of anger issues, and she really felt close to her brother, but her brother was in jail now, because he had killed one of her ex-boyfriends. She had complained about the boyfriend, and the brother went over and confronted him and ended up, had a gun with him, ended up shooting the boyfriend, and now he's in jail for 25 years. So, these anger leads to lots. You look at the riots in the streets that you see around the world today, and then the wars that are going on, that's all anger, that's all pent up anger that we're seeing the expression of. It creates all kinds of bad things in the world.
Yeah. Oh, that's horrible. So now I'm going to place the link to your website in the show notes of this episode. I'm going to encourage everyone out there to click on the link, and on your website, you have the information to your book and also the services that you offer, the coaching services that you offer. But I would like to ask a question. Like, if we start on this journey of, eliminating anger, is this something we can, like you've answered it earlier indirectly, something that we could get completely eliminated, or it's going to be like a lifelong journey and we just reduce our anger by a bit, little by little, throughout our life?
Well, you never get it completely eliminated. Okay. So over the last 40 years of my life, I've had very little anger. So I eliminated most of it. And when it does come up now, which it does occasionally, okay, I can step in and eliminate it very quickly. Okay. Doesn't mean that I don't ever get angry. It's just that it's rare now. And things that used to trigger me in the past don't trigger me anymore because I've changed the way I look at them and understand them. Okay. And see them. So that's all very possible to do. All right. And if you have that ability, if you have the ability to eliminate anger anytime it comes up and you don't want it, then you can use it. You can use that ability anytime that you want to. And you can literally have any anger episode that you currently experience go away quickly, or you can reach back into your past if there are things that you're still angry about in the past, and you can transform the way you see that thing as well, and you can let go of that anger, which is what you do when you do true forgiveness. True forgiveness is looking at the situation in a different way so that you are able to not be angry anymore because you're
Yeah.
looking at it differently now, understanding it differently. So, and so you can go back in the past and you can get rid of anger that's been lingering on, and which I've done with a lot of people. Yeah. So in effect, you can get rid of most of it, but it's not magic, and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to practice. You have to practice the skill that I teach you or that you can learn from the book. You have to work at it. I mean, it took me, once I discovered what was going on and discovered I had the ability to get rid of my anger, it probably took me a year to 18 months before I got really, really good at it, by practicing over and over again. So it wasn't an overnight, miracle kind of change. It was, I see it differently now. I understand what to do differently now. And I have to put the work in to practice doing it and prove that it works and verify for myself that it's valid, which I did. You can do that. So you start seeing results pretty quickly, but then to get really good, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, it all starts with changing our perspectives, and gradually we see things differently. We see things with different filters, and that way we get less angry and less angry and less
Yeah,
angry.
as you work through examples in your own life of when you got angry and then you realized you misunderstood things or you didn't see things accurately. Every time you do that, you get a little bit of wisdom that you carry forward. And so when that similar situation happens again, you now can recall that, oh, maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly, and then maybe it's this way and not this way. And then, so you get to start doing that naturally where you don't have to think about it as much. It's kind of like learning how to ride a bike. In the beginning, you think about it a lot and you have to worry about everything. And then after a while, it's just, you just hop on and you ride,
Yeah,
you got it,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned that I really like is the fact that you talked about forgiveness, and I believe they are connected to each other, like
Yes.
forgiveness and anger. Like
Yes.
the inability to forgive could cause a lot of anger. You could be angry at yourself for things you've done in the past. You could be angry at other people for the things they have done in the past, and that way, not forgiving them could cause you to be angry at them, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Well, lack of forgiveness is basically that you're still angry.
yeah, that's true.
You're still looking at it in a way that's making you angry.
Mm,
And you can't really forgive until you change the way you're looking at the situation that made you angry in the first place and see it differently, understand it differently. And then you don't have to do anything. Forgiveness is not something you do or you have to like effort at. If you change the way you look at the situation and see it differently, the forgiveness happens automatically and the anger drops away automatically and the forgiveness happens automatically. The work is to change the way you look at the situation, to see it more accurately than how you originally saw it through those filters that distorted some of the truth and is still distorting the truth.
change the way you see situations and the way things happen in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really fascinating because it's funny because people believe that when they're angry, the feeling of anger is telling them that what they're seeing is true. And it's actually the opposite most of the time. It's a trick. Their brain is tricking them.
Mm,
The anger makes them feel right about what they're seeing and how they're seeing it. And the fact is that they wouldn't have gotten angry in the first place if they saw it correctly, that they actually misperceived it. And now the anger is making it doubly hard for them to realize that there was a mistake that caused the anger in the first place, because now they feel that they're right and they're justified. So it's a really tricky thing with anger. It's like a double whammy. Our brain like tricks us in the first place to make us angry, and then it tricks us again by having the anger keep us from questioning the truthfulness of the things that our brain presented to us. So that's why there's so much anger in the world today, because it's a double whammy and people are just getting hit and they don't understand what's going on. And they're kind of trapped in the brain traps them in the anger that it first created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And talking about the brain trapping us, some people believe that I come from a generation of angry people. I am an angry person by nature. I cannot change. Is that something that is a lie or something
Look at
that can
me.
be
Look at
changed?
me. I actually believe that when I was when I was in my angry phase in my 20s and 30s, if you'd walked up to me and said to me, "Can you ever imagine you being anything other than this way with anger?" Okay. Plus, I had tried all this anger management stuff and it hadn't worked, so I'd failed multiple times to control my anger. I thoroughly believed that I was always going to be that way. That was just part of my personality, and it was never going to
Mm-hmm.
change. I was shocked as hell when I figured this stuff out and it made a difference and I could do something about it. I mean, I was the most surprised person because I would have never believed that that was possible. I thought I was always going to be an angry guy. And I worked with a lot of people over the last 40 years who came in, they thought the same thing. And sure enough, they go through a short coaching program, and my God, they're like different human beings in terms of anger. They're not getting angry as much anymore. Things that triggered them don't trigger them as much anymore. And it's like they wouldn't have believed that they had the ability to do that, but they do. We all have that ability. It's a natural human ability. You just have to know how to tap into it. So
Yeah.
you have it. You have it too. The people that in your family have it. They just haven't gotten their hands on the frameworks and the strategy to control it if they want to.
It's true. And that's why we have you to give us that framework
Yes,
that we need.
that's the idea.
Yeah. So for someone out there, for example, who is looking forward to working with you, connecting with you, apart from your website, is there other ways to connect with you and work with you?
Well, the best way to connect with me is I have a free handout that talks about anger, talks about my coaching program, talks a little bit about the book at the end, but it gives you some good information about anger and me. And if you go to theangersolution.org, you'll be able to download that handout, and it'll get you on my email list so you can communicate with me if you want to. And I send out emails every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I pick a topic each week related to anger or stress, and I break it into 3 parts and deliver it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it'll get you on my email list, and that way, you can keep in touch, and I share more information as we go forward. I've been doing that since 2011, so it's been 13, 14 years now.
Yes. So you said angersolution.org.
.org.
Okay. Theangersolution.org. Okay. I have it noted here. It's going to be in the show notes of this episode also. So I encourage you all to visit theangersolution.org and get the free handbook and reach across to Mort for any help that you need. I really appreciate this conversation with you. You taught me a lot
Yes,
about anger and how it all, boils down to these 3 filters and how it all boils down to changing your perspective, changing the way you see things. Thank you so much. I
absolutely.
appreciate this.
That's the secret.
Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought-provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.